Good morning. Welcome to UGC EPG Patashala on Human Rights and Duties. My name is Professor YSR Murthy. I am the Executive Director for the Center for Human Rights Studies, OP Jindal Global University. In this paper on national mechanisms for the protection and enforcement of human rights, we will take up today the role of media in the protection and promotion of human rights. When we started, we initially covered the national protection system and the role of the three wings of the state, namely the legislature, the executive, the judiciary. The media is regarded as the fourth estate. Is a powerful pillar and it has a key role in the protection and promotion of human rights, and it is part of what is called civil society. And we have already covered the work of certain mechanisms like a National Human Rights Commission, the National Commission for Women, Minorities, Scheduled Castes, Scheduled Tribes, and also the Office of the Chief Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities, or the Central Information Commission. And now let us take up the role of media. At the end of this module, you will understand the role of media in the protection and promotion of human rights, and also understand the ways in which media impacts human rights. The media has a very important role in the protection and promotion of human rights. It exposes human rights violations and provides a platform for various voices to be heard in the public discourse. The communications revolution and convergence of ICT technologies have made it a very powerful and potent force. Today, 24/7 TV channels bring into our bedrooms and drawing rooms developments across the globe. The news media has accelerated beyond imagination the sharing of information on a real-time basis without any frontiers. In fact, media is regarded as the fourth estate in a democracy, complementing the efforts of other three wings of the state, namely the executive, legislature and judiciary. In earlier modules, we have already seen the role of these three wings of the state with regard to protection and promotion of human rights. In this module, we take up the role of media. When we speak of media, we often encounter distinctions like print, electronic media. Of course, in ancient times, the oral tradition, interpersonal communication, folk songs and music, which came under the umbrella of traditional media, were used. In recent times, Facebook, YouTube, mobile SMS, Twitter, Instagram have revolutionized the way information is shared and accessed by people. About 25 years back, people relied on radio and television and newspapers. These days, digital technology and social media are threatening to shake the earlier modes of communication. In a democratic society, media has a multifaceted and a critical role, which includes, among other things, defending democracy and democratic values, changing mindsets and entrenched attitudes, shaping ideas, public opinion and attitudes, acting as an instrument of social change, foster understanding between communities and social groups, to act as a watchdog and to act as a key instrument against the tyranny of authority, bigotry and sectarianism, ideologies of extremism, communalism, hate and disaffection. The aim of journalism is not to please those that hold power or to function as a mouthpieces for various governments. Journalists report, journalists investigate, journalists analyze and they inform the country about politics, religion, celebrities, the arts, sports, revolutions and wars. They entertain and generally supply information to the masses. However, the most significant of all, they are termed as public watchdogs. This role is key factor for the efficient functioning of a democracy. Free media and freedom of knowledge and expression are a core component of any functioning democracy. Freedom of the media is additionally essential for the protection of all human rights. Now, let us look at investigative journalism. You all heard of Bhagalpur blindings. Media is a key ally in the task of protection and promotion of human rights. It exposes human rights violations and seeks justice. For instance, in Bhagalpur blindings case, it was the investigative reporting by the Indian Express which exposed police high-handedness, which exposed police atrocities and it led to the filing of a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court of India. Media reporting led to public outcry about this cruel, barbaric, inhuman treatment meted out to the detainees. Eventually, the perpetrators of these heinous violations have been punished by the courts. This incident gave a big fillip to the genre of investigative reporting. In 1980s and beyond, this reporting took place. In another significant instance, a fearless journalist exposed flesh trade and trafficking of minor girls into prostitution, which again led to public outcry and demands for action against perpetrators. Usha Roy reported in the Indian Express about Mr. Ram Singh, a sane person who was held in Agra mental hospital for more than 2 decades by his relatives who wanted to deprive him of his property. This reporting prompted the National Human Rights Commission to register a suo motu case and it eventually led to Ram Singh's freedom. Such instances can be multiplied. Now, let us look at the linkages between media on the one hand, corruption and human rights violations. Corruption is a violation of human right as it hampers the realization among others of economic, social and cultural rights. There have been any number of examples where media has exposed instances of political or corporate corruption without fear. One has to recall the relentless crusade launched by Chitra Subramaniam and N. Ram in the Hindu newspaper about kickbacks paid to middlemen in the purchase of Bofors guns by India from Sweden. The media reporting led to the downfall of the government in power at the center at that point of time. You heard of Panama Papers leak. Mossack Fonseca is an international offshore law firm registered in Panama and it operates in 42 countries. In terms of absolute numbers, its operations are mind-boggling as it acts for more than 3 lakh companies. The world's 4th biggest provider of offshore services, it operates in several tax havens including Switzerland, Cyprus and the British Virgin Islands and many other places. Its services include incorporating and administering companies in offshore jurisdictions including in the tax havens for an yearly fee and also wealth management. The Panama Papers referred to an unprecedented leak of 11.5 million files from the database of this law firm Mossack Fonseca. In a case of investigative journalism, the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung obtained the records from an anonymous source and later on shared them with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists called ICIJ. The ICIJ in turn shared these startling revelations with a large network of international media partners. According to the Guardian, British newspaper, the Panama Papers reveal the numerous ways in which the rich and powerful persons exploit secretive offshore tax regimes, and it further reported that 12 national leaders are among 143 politicians, their families and close associates from around the world known to have been using offshore tax havens. The significance of this story can be gauged from the fact that it involves leaders of Russia, Britain, Pakistan, Iraq, Ukraine, Egypt and Iceland. Following these revelations, the Supreme Court of Pakistan voted unanimously to remove the Prime Minister Mr. Nawaz Sharif from office and has referred his case to the country's top anti-corruption authority for an investigation. Iceland Prime Minister Mr. Sigmundur Dav Gunnlaugsson resigned. In India, a multi-agency task force has been created to investigate black money deals of 424 clients of Mossack Fonseca. In this case of money laundering, a lot of further action is still awaited. Now, let us look at media and women's rights. In Priyadarshini Mattu murder case, Jessica Lal murder case and Nirbhaya case, the sustained media campaign coverage of protests have galvanized action and ensured that there was no travesty of justice and that perpetrators were not allowed to escape. Sustained media campaign has led to meeting the ends of justice and also law reform. The Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 came into force on 3rd February 2013. It amended as well as inserted new sections in the Indian Penal Code with regard to various sexual offences. New offences like acid attack, sexual harassment, voyeurism, stalking have been incorporated into the Indian Penal Code. These have been defined, criminalized and stringent punishments have been provided for each of these offences. Many of us have seen an innovative ad campaign designed by a PR firm called Bil Bajao against domestic violence. In this short TV advertisement, neighbors, when confronted with cries of domestic violence, ring the bell in which such violence is occurring with a view to put at least a temporary stop to such a human rights violation. It is a powerful tool and the message has gone home in a compelling manner. Media has a role in fighting traditional and harmful practices like sati, child marriages, dowry, son bias, patriarchy and manual scavenging. Now, let us look at the relationship between media reporting on the one hand and the National Human Rights Commission. The NHRC takes suo motu cognizance based on media reports and has initiated action in many important cases. In the year 2014 alone, it did so in over 70 cases. We are going to discuss a few of those sample cases. For instance, Hindu 7th March 2014 reported a news item, bonded to brick kilns migrants from Odisha may forfeit vote. It alleged that as a result of debt bondage, more than 300,000 migrant workers from the western districts of Odisha were forced to remain in the brick kilns in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and would miss out on voting in the Lok Sabha polls in Odisha on April 10th and 17th of 2014. Now, let us look at another case. Pioneer, 20 May 2014, reported a story, Custodial Torture, Asian Human Rights Commission seeks UN intervention. The report alleged that Siddharth Kaushik Datta, a young man, was subjected to custodial torture in one of the police stations in Jorhat district of Assam. Now, let us take third one. Hindu, Delhi, 15 September 2014, news item, Food Security Act beneficiaries yet to be identified. It stated that many state governments had failed to identify the beneficiaries even after a lapse of 1 year after the National Food Security Act was passed. The Indian Express ran a story on 4th August 2014 called Kids Swimming to School, Authorities Promise a Bridge. In Gujarat, district officers meet the village panchayat members. The media report stated that about 125 students of Chota Udaipur, Gujarat swim across the Hiran river to get to their government school in Uttawadi village in Tilakwada Taluka of Narmada district. The villagers had been requesting for the construction of a bridge over the river for a very long time, but in vain. In Tribune of 11th March 2014, there was a news item, 95% kids anemic in Karnal study. According to this report, there has been an alarming situation relating to malnutrition in 4 districts of Haryana, namely Karnal, Yamunanagar, Panchkula and Ambala. The report further stated that on an average, 37.4% children of these districts were found to be underweight. 42.8% children have stunting growth, that is less height according to age. 17.5% children of these districts are suffering from wasting, that is less weight according to height. Yet another news item, the Hindu 6th June 2014 reported a story, teenage girl gang raped. The media report stated that on May 30th, 2014, a teenage girl was allegedly gang raped by 3 persons in Gurgaon, Haryana. Yet in another story, the Tribune of 4th August 2014 said alarming sex ratio in 24 panchayats of Una district. The above list of 7 odd cases is only an illustrative list of many cases in which the National Human Rights Commission took suo motu cognizance and initiated action. They cover the entire range of civil, political, economic, social and cultural rights. In each of these cases, the Commission issued notice to concerned authorities, called for a report and made important recommendations to redress these serious human rights violations. But for these media reports, these violations would not have been exposed and justice would have eluded the victims. Now, let us look at another strategy adopted by media of naming and shaming. Non-governmental organizations use media for spreading awareness about issues concerning human rights, law and policy reform. In order to build public support for their causes, NGOs use media advocacy for naming and shaming those engaged in human rights violations and those who are trying to subvert them. This is one of the several strategies used by NGOs to advance human rights protection. How do legislators use? For instance, members of parliament often use media reports to raise relevant questions regarding human rights and secure the accountability of the executive. They often use it in 0 hour. and also in parliamentary debates. When there is a standoff between the ruling party and opposition members, and when parliament is unable to function, the debate is often shifted to television studios and other media outlets. Many human rights violations arise on account of biases, prejudices and fears held by people. For instance, the low social, economic, political status of women is a direct offshoot of the view held by men about women and their role in society. There are gender based stereotypes about the role of women in the society, which prevents approximately 50% of the population from enjoying their full rights on an equal basis with men. In the same manner, if one looks at the stereotypes and prejudices based on religion, place of origin, disability, HIV positive status, sexual orientation, they had in the past contributed to serious human rights violations. Caste based discrimination and atrocities on scheduled castes and other backward castes by the so called upper castes also spring from entrenched belief held by one section against the other. In this context, media has a strong role and in ensuring that there is no breeding ground for myths, biases, prejudices about persons belonging to any community. If used in the right way, media can act as a bridge between communities, foment harmony and build alliance of civilizations and take societies out of conflicts based on identity politics or an account of other facts. On the other hand, there had been many instances of how media can exacerbate, media can deepen, media can accentuate existing divisions and create disharmony, cause human rights violation through misuse. One needs to recall the Editors Guild of India report in the aftermath of Gujarat riots in 2002. They observed that insensitive reporting and sensationalism by the language press, that is Gujarati press, incited people and contributed to violent acts. There were SMSs circulated not to employ people belonging to one religious community as cooks or drivers. The repetitive display of provocative visuals and lack of sensitivity in reporting was a direct contributory factor for communal riots spiraling out of control. Sandesh and Samachar carried large poster type headlines, exaggeration, lack of verification and sourcing, misleading headlines, captions for photos, all of which contributed to sensationalism and magnification of violence. Mobiles were used to direct mobs, emails were sent to spread information and misinformation. There were attacks on persons belonging to Northeast in Bangalore a few years back. It was preceded by a disinformation campaign through social media. Free media indeed is an important tool for early warning system, not only against natural disasters, but also in times of other crises. It helps governments remain alive to the needs and concerns of people. For instance, Nobel laureate Amartya Sen in his Democracy as a Universal Value observed as follows, and I quote, "Famines are easy to prevent if there is a serious effort to do so, and a democratic government facing elections and criticisms from opposition parties and independent newspapers cannot help but make such an effort." Not surprisingly, while India continued to have famines under British rule, right up to independence, they disappeared suddenly with the establishment of a multi-party democracy and a free press, unquote. Now, let me turn to rural investigative reporting. P. Sainath created a niche for himself with a new genre of rural investigative reporting. He covered, among other areas, starvation deaths in Orissa, drought relief, agrarian distress, rural debt, right to livelihood, situations of Dalits and practice of untouchability. As the formal rural affairs editor of the Hindu, he ran a series of articles on these matters and is the 2007 winner of the prestigious Raman Magsaysay Award for Journalism, Literature and Creative Communications Arts. He was given the award for his passionate commitment as a journalist to restore the rural poor to India's national consciousness. He was also the first reporter in the world to win Amnesty International's Global Human Rights Journalism Prize in its inaugural year in 2000. He won many other awards and honors for his work. Sainath's book, Everybody Loves a Good Drought, won many honors, accolades. In the late 90s, Nikhil Chakrabarti, one of the finest and senior most editors, described Sainath's work as the conscience of the Indian nation. What are the negative side of the media? Today one finds there is a predominance of politics, cricket, crime, cinema and fashion news in the mainstream media outlets. Entertainment or infotainment often masquerades as news. Hardly 25% of the national news bulletins are about health, education, development, welfare, environment, etc. There's 1/3 of the coverage is about politicians and party politics, says Center for Media Studies. So, all this give rise to some human rights imperatives. Media must give voice to the voiceless and the silent victims. Media must play a constructive role in moderation, consensus building rather than sharpen disagreements. Media must articulate liberal values, empower liberalism. Media, even as media campaigns for justice in Jessica Lal, Priyadarshini Mattu case, commentators say that there are major exclusions based on class and caste. This kind of campaign needs to be extended to very poor sections that never gets access to justice, which rights of hawkers, slum and pavement dwellers or even Dalits. Media that way has a lot of ground to cover. Portrayal of women in the media, stereotypes, gender biases are a cause of concern. Adequate space to women's views and problems is not there. So, who makes the news is a question which is a need for a critical reflection. When it comes to reflecting women's viewpoints, women's perspectives on the world, the mirror has a very large and enduring black spot, says a report of the Global Media Monitoring Project in 2005. So, there is a need for introspection within media, there is a need for a debate within, there is a need for a self-regulatory mechanisms, greater professionalism. We can think of awards as one of the solutions, like increasing the media ethics, accreditation of media training schools, professional codes of conduct can also help. In conclusion, media has great power to expose human rights violations and secure justice and dignity. If used properly, it can be a significant ally in the task of protection and promotion of human rights. It can also be used to spread hatred, disaffection, incite communal violence or perpetuate stereotypes about the role of women, minorities and other vulnerable sections in the society. Thank you.